Hi guys, Dave here for Southern Land Solar. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm looking at wild edibles, in particular with the Harakeke. Now the Harakeke is known as the New Zealand flax, but there's another one as well in the same family called the Harakeke. I hope I'm getting the pronunciation correct. This is the Harakeke and the other one is the Harakeke, I believe. And the Harakeke is known as the mountain flax. So the New Zealand flax, the other one is the mountain flax. So when it comes to the wild edibles and the medicinal purposes of the plant, they're pretty much the same. When we're talking about this one, you can apply it to the other. So distinguishing characteristics of this. Well, both of them are found coastal, which is where we are today, out on the beaches of the west coast, coastal all the way up to subalpine. That's pretty much where this one stops, and then when you go into the alpine regions you can still find the mountain flax, the Harakeke, in there. The leaves of the Harakeke, about 1 meter to 3 meters long, sword shaped. You can just see a mass of them back here. And the flowers are described in, I believe it was Joanna Knox's book, Foraging. Awesome book. Flowers are described as being reddish. Now, I've seen them a little bit of green in them, reddish, yellow, oranges, but tends to be a reddish tinge as the base color to them. The edible parts, which I just found out recently from reading Joanna's book, is the flower itself is edible, but also the nectar inside of it. I have done a previous video on the medicinal purposes of the gum, or the also the gel that is at the base of the leaves when you cut it open, so you could check that video out if you like. That gum is also edible. Not a whole lot of nutrition in it, but it means you can put it in your mouth for sores, aching teeth, things like that. An interesting thing about this plant is when the Europeans first came to New Zealand and first came into this contact with this plant, they'd never seen anything like it. And they found in many of the Maori settlements and those areas, they were cultivating their own patches of it because it was such a useful plant. You can get hard and soft fibers from the Harakeke leaves, the single leaf alone. You get hard and soft fibers from them. And those fibers we use for fishing nets, fishing line, cordage, clothing, building materials, baskets, used for everything in every aspect of life. And of course the food and the medicinal purposes of the plant as well. Not only the medicinal gels and that you can get from this plant, but the leaves themselves can act, I'll go into that more in depth in another video, but the leaves themselves can be used as bandages, poultices for soaking up discharge from wounds, also be used for splinting breaks and fractures. Yeah, it's a phenomenal plant. It was such a part of the Maori culture and such an integral part to thriving and surviving in New Zealand that when the Europeans said they didn't have any of these back home in England, the Maori were surprised by that. They didn't know how anybody could live without this plant because it is such an integral part of life out here in New Zealand. So very interesting. And then the Europeans, as we do, saw the monetary value of that. In particular, the Navy was one example, because they knew they're always looking for new materials and new sources for making rope for their ships, and I guess possibly the sails as well, because I believe the sails might have been linen, and linen comes from flax. And so this was eventually harvested on a grand scale in New Zealand. It was such a useful plant and exported. So enough about the history. I'm still sweating buckets, so let's get into the plant. So, as I said before, the leaves can be eaten, or the flower can be eaten, and also inside each of these flowers is nectar. The descriptions I've read in the books on the subjects vary from very little nectar at all to basically bucket loads. You tip it up and it pours out. And it was a source of a sweetener for foods, or it could be drunken just by itself if you had enough of it. And it was called, described as being like sweet water. And I've tasted it, and it's very, very watery. The nectar is about 55% water, plus it's got some a low amount of minerals and vitamins in it. and you know, 55% water, not a whole lot of sugar there, but it tastes like sweet water if you can find it. The first descriptions of there not being much at all in there, that's where I'm at with my thinking about these things. This is nectar, and so any creature within 100 miles that's got a sweet tooth, like tui love these things, bellbirds, the different birds, the insects, everything comes to these things and utilizes the nectar from it. So when poor old Dave comes out here to sweat in the sun and try a little bit, there's nothing. How the traditional way of doing it, from what I've read, is you take off the flower, there will be a gourd or some sort of container device, and you would tap the flower against it like that, and the nectar would fall into the gourd. So you'd have to have, in this area, you'd have to have tons of them, really, because all I get is drips. I've walked in through a Harakeke area and I've shaken the plant and I've felt the nectar fall on me. I felt drops of nectar falling on me just from shaking the plant over my head. So thinking that this was a really good source and there was a lot of it in there, I went to some fresh flowers, started tapping it out, and that's all I got. I just got drops on my hand. So I've never really seen it where it's flowing out, and I've never seen it where it's dripping out. Not that that isn't the case. In other areas of the country you might be able to get that. But I've tried the Auckland area, I've tried the Waikato area, and I've never really found, over 5 or 6 years of looking, I've never really found anything more than just specks of it that I can flick into my hand. But as a survival food, you're not going to live for a long time on this, but it might help you out if you got the time to spend trying to harvest it. How I harvest it is, like with this guy here, I try to get a bit of a stalk on the flower so that I can hang on to that stalk. And basically, I flick it with my finger like that, trying to tap it all into here. Tap it all into the cup of my hand. So, hanging onto it like that. There that goes. Of course, there's a camera on. Okay, bone dry, nothing coming out of that. And this one is a nice healthy one, big fat one. So, let's see what we can get out of it. I'm just feeling little bits of fluid flicking onto my hand. Really, you don't get a lot. Not from the ones I've seen, and as I said before, I've been checking these things out for 5 or 6 years before shooting this video, looking for a good source of nectar, and I've yet to find it. Now, you're not going to be able to see that, but I just have very slight sheen on my hand of sweet sugary substance, and tastes as it does liquid, like watery sugar or sweet water. Another way I have found of getting it out, getting more out of the plant, is to separate and open like that, and where I found it, it sits, the drips of it sit basically right at the base of that flower when you've taken all the petals off. Some people may or may not want to do this, but I just look at it, give it a bit of a suck, and it's gone. And getting it into the mouth in a survival situation, of course, I'd be going through every single flower on this tree. I probably would get enough to have some, to have a temporary benefit to my body, some nutrition. But I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't do that, because down there is where the birds' tongues go when they're sucking the stuff out as well. And morning and evening, I guess, is when they come out and feed on these plants. So I thought about that and then tried it anyway. I haven't come down with avian bird flu or anything yet, not yet. So I'll probably keep doing it for a little while. This will be my last one. I'm not going to go through a whole lot because it's just not necessary. So again, got the flower, grab a bit of the stalk, hang on to the stalk. I form a cup with my hand, and I just start tapping it, and whatever's in there just flicks down. I can just see the edge of these, I forget what you call these things, the little things in the middle. They're just starting to get shiny, so I can see the nectar is flicking down onto them, and then from there into my hand. Yeah, very, very little. And what I have got is orange hands, because another use of this is dye. So careful what you put it on afterwards, make sure it's dried. It comes off the next day, it doesn't dye my hands permanently. Harakeke, the New Zealand flax or swamp flax, and the mountain flax is, again, these leaves here of the Harakeke are 1 to 3 meters long. The mountain flax are up to 2 meters long. It's a smaller plant. The flowers on the mountain flax are described as more of a greenish tinge, whereas these guys more of a reddish tinge. The mountain flax also is very easily distinguished by its seeds. Up here you can see some seeds there, these seed pods, and on the Harakeke, the swamp flax, the New Zealand flax here, they come along the branch and then they grow straight up, pointing upwards and curving upwards. On the mountain flax, the seed pods hang down underneath the branch and they're twisted. The seed pods on the Harakeke are straight, the mountain flax or the Harakeke hang down and they're twisted. This plant is very intriguing as well. The nectar is when the flowers are in bloom, so that is spring into summer, and then from there late summer into autumn is when it matures into seed pods, and from there seeds. But the interesting thing about it is just the great variety of stages of growth just within one region. 40 minutes from here there are Harakeke as well. They're not in the swamp, close to a creek, but it's by no means damp ground. They're thriving, but there's not a single flower on them. They're already in the advanced seed stage. This is the young seed stage here. The seed here is green, a bit of a yellowish tinge to it. That's going to continue advancing, growing, maturing until it is black. And some of them at that other location, only 40 minutes from here, are black already. They're already at their final stage, and the next stage is the winter stage of the plant. And we're only into summer. We're well into summer. I mean, it is boiling. So the great variety of stages of growth of these plants within the same region is really quite something. I guess it has so many different factors involved with that. The ground that it's growing in, the kind of nutrition the ground provides, the water that it gets. Here it's coastal. I'm on the offside, so between me and the ocean, the winds and the salt air, is these flax leaves. So these are more protected, which is why I came to this side. I figured they would produce more nectar. Over there I figured it's harsher environment just on the other side of these flax leaves, so I figured it would be more dried out. So I guess all of that has a lot of influence on how these plants mature. Other edibles is the seeds, the seed pods themselves. So we have the nectar, we have the flowers, and we have the seed pods. This seed pod here is green, it hasn't turned black yet, and the seeds they come up to the camera. Not going to get too close, every step shakes the camera. Hopefully you can see that. The seeds are white. Now they can be white or greenish, and trying to get them out here. White or greenish and quite meaty. You can see them there. They're edible when they're in the white stage or the greenish stage. Quite edible. They've got lots, a number of fatty acids in them. I shouldn't say lots. And that is much more worthwhile as a survival food, those seed pods. In fact, that doesn't taste too bad. These are the sweetest ones I've had. I've had them when they taste quite sour and still the same color. So again, the variety within one plant species of the different stages of growth is quite something. So these ones are actually the nicest I've tasted. They're very nice. Let's get those seeds out. Seeds you can add to food. Is it the same as flaxseed oil, things like that, which is very healthy for you? I really don't know. This is described as a kind of flax, but it's more of the aloe family than the flax family. But it may have the same nutritional value as flaxseed. I'm not sure. But quite a little handful of them there. That's really, really nice. Probably one of the better tasting wild edibles that I've had in New Zealand. It's really very nice. And as you can see, man, you can get a ton of seeds. My friends at home harvest these and cook and eat very natural holistic foods and organic foods. And they showed me a bottle this weekend of the old milk pint bottles, about 3/4 full of black seeds. Which brings us to, as these continue to mature, they'll eventually turn black and the seeds will turn black. And the seeds get a bit of a bitter taste to them. But what they're known for is you can roast them up, then grind them into a coffee powder and actually make a coffee like you would a normal coffee. Well, that's all I have for you today, guys. Very sorry it's been so long between my videos, but things have just been really good, but been really busy, and it's hard to get out here sometimes. I have a whole bunch of other videos that I've already filmed, but I have to go and put through editing. They're already done, and sorry it's just taking so long. I appreciate everybody remaining subscribed to my channel, even though you're not getting the videos, which is what I said I will get to you. So I am sorry about that, but I'm still, all this COVID thing and different job requirements and stuff have kind of knocked them on the head temporarily, so I get out here when I can. But I still get out, and what I do now is get out on day walks, go through the bush and day walks, seeing what's in my local area. So yeah, go check these out. Harakeke, New Zealand flax, swamp flax, or the Harakeke, the mountain flax. And remember that just on a day walk along a path full of tourists through the bush in your local area, you're going to see these. You're going to see the wild edibles that we talked about in the other videos. You're going to see the same stuff right there in your local town or on the edge of your city that you would see if you were in the deep bush. So go out and get out into the outdoors, and even if it's just a day walk in your local area. Yeah, that's it, guys. The Harakeke wild edible. Thanks for tuning in.